Hey guys, welcome back to the House of Gouldians. So in this episode, episode 6, we've got quite a lineup for you. We're going to be introducing the second pair of red-headed purple-breasted greenbacks, which we said we were going to use the names of the British monarchs. So if you didn't see episode 1, a quick overview, we said that the red-headed purple-breasted normals would be named after the British monarchs. The black-headed purple breast would be named after the French monarchs, and then the orange-headed birds would be named after the Spanish monarchs. And this is just to help you as an audience sort of keep the three lines clear in your minds, and then also help you sort of follow along with their progress and how they're doing. Now, one of the other things I need to sort of point out is that we won't necessarily always pair the birds up the way that they introduce. In each week, I'm showing you a cock and a hen bird from the majestic bloodline, but that doesn't mean that it's those two that would necessarily be paired up. We'll still make those decisions when we come to actually pairing the birds a little bit later. All right, so having said all of that, so part 1, should I say, is that introduction to Egbert and Victoria this week. And then following that segment, I was going to discuss, or I'm wanting to discuss with you in part 2, the further preparation for the breeding season. So in last week's episode, we looked at the austerity period, which we're in at the moment. We're just over halfway through it. And we said that that was where we're going to take away the sort of complete mix of different seeds that we give, and we're going to reduce the birds to a red manna diet. I am trying a small percentage of white millet with it this year. It's just I felt that perhaps it's a little bit harsh to go red manna only, to see if the birds sort of come back into condition a little bit quicker. And I'll let you know the results of that, or you'll see it for yourself as you follow along, whether the birds come back into condition earlier or whether it's sort of June before we start producing chicks again this year. So yeah, if I'm right, we should start then having eggs laid that are fertile by March, if all goes according to plan. So that's kind of where we're at. So coming back to part 2, what we're also going to be doing is talking about the preventative measures we take during the austerity period in preparation for that breeding season. So we're wanting to get rid of any potential mite that we might have, although there's no signs of it at this stage. And then we're also wanting to deworm the birds ahead of the breeding season. So I'm going to show you how I mix up my mite medicine and how I treat for mite in this particular episode, and then in the next episode we'll discuss the deworming and any other preventative measures that we take. So for example, we will also look at potentially a coccidiosis treatment just before the start of the breeding season, so that it maximizes the chances of survival for the youngsters. So that's the game plan for today. I hope you enjoy it. Today we're looking at Egbert and Victoria. Now, they are red-headed purple-breasted greenback pair from the House of Batista. Now, like the black-headed pair that we looked at last week, they've already been through the austerity period, as the House of Batista breeds a month earlier than the rest of us, and as a result his whole cycle is a month earlier. So that's not a problem, but we just need to bear that in mind in terms of where the birds are in the sort of process. Now, the rest of the birds in the bird room, like we said, are still on austerity, whereas they actually now through the austerity, and we're busy starting to feed them up. So next week's episode we will look at the soft food mixes and how we go about preparing that and getting the birds into condition. But for today we wanted to look at the birds themselves. So Egbert, if we have a look at him, you'll notice that he has all the right attributes in terms of body shape and or model type, but his colouring is ever so slightly brighter than George, the first red-headed bird that we looked at in episode 1. when George has an advantage over Egbert is that George is ever so slightly bigger in terms of his total or overall length. So my point is that both cockbirds in our red-headed line have their own strengths and weaknesses, and where one is perhaps lacking in size, the other one makes up for it in brightness of colour. But both birds have a nice even tone in terms of the red, the green and the yellow. So neither of them are bad birds, don't get me wrong. It's just one slightly brighter than the other and one slightly bigger than the other. And then in terms of sort of head shape, it's the same sort of thing. So we've got that nice even, or shall I say smooth line that goes from the beak over the head and down the back. That's not sort of ditched or sort of bumps in there as we go. So yes, Egbert, I'm very happy with him. He's got through the quarantine well, and now he's ready for us to prepare for the breeding season. Victoria, on the other hand, if you have a look at her, you'll notice straight away that her red head is a lot more visible than Elizabeth's was. And there was nothing wrong with Elizabeth's head, but if she was in a shadow, you wouldn't really notice the red feathering because it was so dark, whereas Victoria's red head is a lot brighter. So both birds from the House of Batista have the slightly brighter feathering, and that's fantastic because now it gives us the options that we need in terms of how we're breeding the birds, so that ultimately we can have birds that have the perfect colouring. And then we can also, because the first two were slightly bigger than the second pair, hopefully we can build towards a slightly bigger bird as well. And Egbert and Victoria are that slightly more rounded, almost cobby looking. They're not cobby, but they're leaning more towards that side of things. So, you know, we've got those options that now we can start playing with and deciding how we're going to pair up so that we get the best possible outcomes. And that's what a stud is all about. It's about combining the birds, not just breeding your best bird to your best bird. It's about those combinations to reach a point where you have a consistently great bird. So that's what we're doing with them. So yeah, I really look forward to the breeding season. I think they're a great addition, and it's going to be really exciting to sort of see when we start mixing the pairs, which may only be next season if we decide to rather keep them together for now. But we're going to start seeing that blending over the next couple of seasons, and we're going to start seeing the benefits of pairing those different shapes and different colors together to ultimately end up with hopefully a great bird. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Moving on to the second part of the show now. We said we were going to look at some of the preventative treatments and preparing the birds for the breeding season. Alright, so in terms of our education segment today, we're going to go through some of the preparations for the breeding season. And in particular, the medications we're giving. So in the 2 episodes ago, we discussed the austerity period. You'll notice that the birds are on red manna only at this stage. And we're almost through that period, but before we get through it, we need to make sure that we've treated or done preventative treatment for all the nasties. So like the quarantine sort of segment that we did, we're going to be treating for mite, which is what I'm going to be doing today. We're then going to be giving them a little bit of a break, and then we're going to deworm them, and also we're going to right towards the end of the sort of austerity period, going into the into January. We will then go ahead and do our anti-coccidiosis treatments, and that way we know that all these sort of underlying parasites and problem children that could cause issues with our chicks have been eliminated and cleaned out of the birds before the breeding season. So this is quite important. Right, so let's go ahead and now mix up our medications. Alright, so for the mite medication, we're going to obviously need the medicine itself, which I'm using an S76, which is 5 ml per 2 litre. We're going to need our 2 litre bottle, obviously, to mix up in, something to measure out your millage, and then obviously you're going to need all your drinkers that you're going to be filling. So yeah, first thing obviously is we're going to need some water in our 2 litre. So once we've got our water, then we're going to measure out 5 ml. And put that in the 2 litre. I then just put the top on and give it a good stir or shake. It will froth a bit, don't worry about that, that is normal for this medication and most of the medicines that I've dealt with. And then you just need to obviously fill up all of them. Make sure that you don't miss any cages, because you don't want the mite moving from one side of the bird room to the other. So if you're going to treat for parasites, make sure that you do your whole bird room or all your aviaries, and preferably all your birds at the same time, because you don't want to, for example, get rid of mite in your bird room, then you go into your aviaries and then you come back into your bird room and you bring mite eggs or mite themselves on your hands and now into your bird room. So I like to treat everyone, all my birds at the same time. So pet birds in the house, birds in the aviary, as well as birds in the bird room itself. It's very important that you remove any other water sources, because that way the birds are forced to drink the medicine. It doesn't taste nice, so if you give them a fresh water option, they're going to be rather drinking that, and then they're not going to get any of the good medicine into their system. So you need to remove your baths, any secondary water dishes that you might have, so that the only option the birds have is the medicated water that you're giving. Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I don't like the drop method behind the back of the neck. And it's not that I've got anything against those medications, it's just for me to catch out every single bird, both in the bird room and in the cages, the aviaries, and my parrots and that kind of thing. It's just not a practical solution for me. If you've only got a handful of birds, then yes, it's a different scenario. And obviously you're going to use with whatever works best for you. One of the other sort of big things that's important to remember, particularly with mite medication, is that you follow up in 14 days time. So I'll give them medication for 24 hours, and then I will wait 14 days, and then I will retreat them. And that way I know it's broken the mite cycle. So there's no chance of any sort of freshly hatched mite that are then reinfecting the birds. And some people actually go and they'll do that for 3 weeks in a row, or 3 treatments in a row, just to make 100% sure. I've never felt the need to do that. I'll follow the vet's recommendation, which was that you treat for 24 hours and then 14 days later you treat again. And that's worked well for me, so that's what I do. So in today's breaking news, I wanted to discuss the results of the World Online Gouldian show, which was recently released. Now, before we get to the results themselves, just a huge congratulations to the organizers of the show. I think what you achieved is absolutely amazing. To get 22 different countries to participate, it was 106 breeders that took part, and then obviously from various clubs from all over the world, and 426 birds were entered. So what you've achieved is absolutely amazing, and from South Africa's perspective, where we haven't been able to compete against other countries, it was an incredible experience to be able to participate in a truly international show. So a huge thank you to each and every one of you that were involved in making this happen. And I really do look forward to next year's show, assuming, of course, you're going to be doing one. And then coming to the actual winners themselves. So I'm going to start sort of in my own home country and just go through to the internationals. I'm not going to mention all the prize winners, but just the 3 that sort of were of particular importance to myself as a South African. So first of all, the winner of the sort of South African points, the person who got the highest point score, was Keith Lawford with 91 points, and that was for a red-headed, white-breasted cockbird, and truly a remarkable bird indeed. Then the head or the winner of the African region, or Middle East African region, was a Salia Mazria, and I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, and that was with a silver, and it took 93 points. And to give you an idea on how close that was, the overall winner for the World Online Gouldian show was Henk Lemolder, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, from the Netherlands, and you won with 95 points, and that was for a red-headed purple-breasted hen. So it'll give you an idea of sort of how close the winners were. There was 2 points between first and the winner of the African contingent, and then another 2 points to the top South African versus the top of Africa, or top contender in Africa. So really, well done to each and every one of the participants. Congratulations to those that won special prizes. And just once again, a huge thank you to the organizers.